or we may have some amazing sexual states by accident. But I had to keep my Tantra interest in the closet because I was in the mainstream world of therapy. We grew up in dysfunctional homes, so we're kind of like, well, if I'm around people I love, I can just my freak flag fly and act like a jerk and say anything I want and act like I'm 2 years old and I haven't gotten my food. When I caught myself doing that, I'm like, what's going on here? This is the person I should treat the best. And I saw a book that said sex is spiritual, and I went, doing. For me, that's true.
Welcome to episode 65 of Super States, Practices of Transformation with me, your host, Joshua Peters. Super States explores the ways you can use trance states with personal or professional development. And in every episode, we're going to talk to world-class experts or industry leaders, revolutionary thinkers, people who are sharing with us the latest information, different tools along with their own personal stories, all there to inspire you on your journey. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast through your favorite podcast host, or you can subscribe on YouTube. That way you'll stay up to date with new episodes. And if you enjoy this show, give me a 5-star review. That's the best way to help the show grow. Today, I'm excited to welcome Catherine Auman. She's a licensed marriage family therapist and an expert in Tantric practices. With 4 books under her belt and a 5th in the works, Catherine has dedicated her career to exploring how Tantra can transform relationships and personal lives. Join us as we explore this fascinating topic of Tantric practices, how they can transform relationships and add to personal growth. Finding the sacred in everyday life with Catherine Auman. Welcome to Super States. I'm here today with Catherine Auman. Catherine, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks, Josh. It's great to be here.
I'm excited to have you, Catherine. I always like to start the show with just a quick question. Tell us what you do and how that makes an impact on people's lives.
Well, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I work with people and couples online. And I'm also a researcher of what you call super states in the field of sexuality. I've been studying Tantra for many years, and my husband and I teach some online Tantra courses. And I've written 4 books at this time about Tantra, and I'm working on my 5th. So I hopefully can share with your listeners today something about super sexual states.
I'd love to hear about that. That's something that's really very interesting to me and mainly because this is a way that most people go into a super state at one time or another without necessarily even knowing that that's what they're like, that they're in an altered state.
Yes, actually, Abraham Maslow, who people probably know from, he had the hierarchy of values. He said that the 2 most common ways that people access altered states of consciousness is through sex and through listening to music.
Yeah.
These are kind of everyday super states that we may not even notice we're having. We just get overcome with listening to some gorgeous music or getting down to rock and roll or techno music while we're dancing. We just get ecstatic, or we may have we have amazing sexual states by accident. And those happen. We don't have no idea how many people that happens to, whether that's everybody, happens once in a while, or it's happening all the time because people don't really talk about it.
Yeah. Well, I want to get into some of these ideas around Tantra and explore some of the books. But first, I find that most people fall into the kind of way of being through their own challenges in life. So what I'd like to do is hear your backstory. Like how did you get into this? What was the challenges that you faced that led you to this solution?
Yeah, well, like many people who get into personal and spiritual growth, I came from a quite challenging childhood, and I had to get into therapy to heal myself from that. I suffered from depression for many years, and consequently, my romantic relationships were a disaster. I tried, but I was really bad at it. as many people who have difficulty in childhood. So I just kept working on myself, kept reading, kept exploring, kept looking into things, became a therapist because I wanted to know about how people help themselves in relationship. And I was in a bookstore once, and it was in Venice Beach. There was a little bookstore there, it's still there. And I saw a book that said sex is spiritual, and I went, doing. For me, that's true. And I'd never seen those two words put together before. It was kind of a new idea back then, or it was kind of a cult hidden idea back then. Now it's gone more mainstream. I don't know how much you could call mainstream, but it's more mainstream than it
More
used to
mainstream.
be. You don't have to be embarrassed to talk. Well, maybe you do. It depends who you're talking to. Anyway, for me, that totally made sense. I started exploring what that meant, sacred spirituality, Tantra, studying how it happened in the East, how it happened in kind of secret societies, and just was working on that. And now I'm working on a PhD in transpersonal states of sexuality because I just have found that so compelling that people are having these altered states. And as I want to share with your listeners, there's ways that you can cultivate these altered states through sexuality.
Great. Well, let's talk about the. So you said you've got 4 books. You're working on a 5th. Uh, what was the impetus to the books?
Well, I don't wanted to be a writer till I was 10, since I was 10, but I forgot until I was 45. Just forgot. And then when I was 45, I woke up, I went, how could I forget that? Anyway, so I started taking writing classes, and I was doing a workshop called Tantric Dating, which was a story in itself of how I was trying to, I entered the dating world again later in life, and it was like, oh my God, this is so unloving. How do I put this together with my spiritual quest? And I kind of figured out how to date in a spiritual way, and I wanted to share that. And I kind of put this book together just to kind of support the workshop I was doing on it, helping people meet in a tantric way. And much to my surprise, it was named by Book Authority one of the best dating books of all time, and it went onto the Amazon bestseller list. I'm like, what? There must be a hunger for this. So I wrote a couple more books to go with it, and that's apparently a lot of people are liking that.
And these are all based around this idea of tantric dating.
Tantric dating, and then tantric mating, which is how to be in a tantric relationship. There's a little bit in there about super states, and then tantric relating, which is how to communicate in a way that not only enhances your sex life but your relationship. So those 3 books are going together, and then the 5th one's going to be tantric loving.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I have a couple more planned after that. But like any writer, I'm a good procrastinator. So,
So tantric dating, tantric mating, tantric relating, but there's a 4th one. What's the 4th one?
tantric loving, that's the one I'm working on.
Oh, that's okay. So you have 3, and then
Oh,
there's a
I'm
4th.
sorry. There is the 4th one, which is it's called the Tantric Mastery Collection, which is you can get all 3 books in one volume.
Got it. Okay, so it's just kind of putting them all together.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's the easier way if you want to just get them all in one book.
and it's another book that you've gotten. So
It
just
just say
another.
4.
Okay. What are the? So you started this by sharing how you are a therapist for relationship therapist. I think I heard you say or
Marriage and family. Mhm.
and then did you do that before you started getting interested in tantra?
It was around the same time, but I had to keep my tantra interest in the closet because I was in the mainstream world of therapy. I was taking insurance. I was working for clinics. So that whole interest of mine, I really had to have a split personality. I would be the straight therapist at work, and then I would go home and be interested in my other studies.
Mm-hmm.
And then later, I just decided I'm coming out of the closet, and this is my interest. And I think that these tantric principles can help any couple. Not
Mhm.
every couple is going to be open to them. It's not just about having big super orgasms like people think Tantra means. It's about a certain way of communicating, being present, being mindful, making space for the other person, um, and this type of thing is helpful for any couple, not just people who are interested in Tantra. Tantra is, unfortunately, the marketing machine in the mainstream has made it sound like it's just about getting yourself into weird pretzel postures and huffing and puffing and having huge orgasms and stuff. And if people are into that, it's probably a small percentage of Tantra says that's fine. Nothing wrong with any of that. But basically, it's about everything's sacred. Your partner is sacred. This relationship is part of your spiritual path in life. And so we honor being together as part of a way we can develop spiritually as well as develop our relationship. How do we develop more love, more uh, intimate communication? How do we more honoring of our partner's spiritual path instead of like my way or the highway, which a lot of my previous relationships were kind of like that, unfortunately. But you know, that's kind of a rut we get into.
I think it's pretty common, a pretty common conflict that people end up with.
Yeah.
It sounds like Tantra, the way that you're defining it, is really about developing a way of being with another person, like with, or maybe even with yourself. But it's kind of, you described it in a way that is about connecting.
Yes, and what Osho said is one of my, who is a great Tantra master who was in India. He was lived here for a while as well. And he said it's a way of relating to the world as all is sacred. And we grew up, most of us in the Judeo-Christian world, as everything is not sacred. We were told this is sacred and this isn't. And if you're doing what the religion says, it's sacred, and other things are not. And I certainly, the world I grew up in, sex was not sacred. It was naughty unless you're married and you have the lights off. It's just kind of very interesting, but definitely in that realm of not sacred. And so that's one reason Tantra got a bad reputation from the very beginning by saying sex is sacred too, and all is sacred, and my partner is sacred, and what's happening is sacred. And trying to live in a world where I honor all of it as sacred is a challenge for anybody who grew up in with this idea that if you do that, I don't like it, and I don't like this is happening, and I'm going to blame them for what's going on. We see this a lot with the conflicts that are going on. Palestinian and Israelis, they're the problem, they're the problem, they're the problem, the other person's the problem. And certainly we do this on a personal basis. My partner's the problem. And in Tantra, we say it takes two. And learning how to work out this conflict is actually a part of our spiritual path. So the path of Tantra would say this conflict has come up for us to evolve ourselves and grow and learn and become more loving people.
So let's say a couple is in the midst of a challenging argument or moment. What would a way that they could use these uh, ideas to move through that?
Well, hopefully, I hope for myself, if I'm in the middle of a conflict, I'll be able to take a breath and go, what's my part in this? How am I contributing to this issue? How am I getting stuck? Instead of going, you're stuck and you're the problem and you're making this conflict, I go, what do I have to learn right here, right now? So it's really taking personal responsibility for what's going on in my life in this couple as well. So the partner's going to come and challenge you on all kinds of things that you have unfinished from your past, or ways that you're not as loving as you might be, or prejudices you have, or all kinds of things. So we would see, what's my part? Many couples I work with, for example, they have forgotten to be kind towards their partner, because we get into this idea of like, we grew up in dysfunctional homes, so we're kind of like, Well, if I'm around people I love, I can just let my freak flag fly and act like a jerk and say anything I want and take and act like I'm 2 years old and I haven't gotten my food, and really we need to like remember that we need to have kind behavior all the time. Not even with our partner, we don't get to just be our worst self and be um, treated well in return.
Yeah, I find it really interesting that the people we care about the most are the ones we have the most freedom from ourselves to kind of treat poorly.
Yeah, it is weird. I know when I caught myself doing that, I'm like, what's going on here? This is the person I should treat the best. So, Tantras, they have some exercises in Tantra where you imagine your lover as a god or a goddess. In Tantra, they have all these goddesses that are blue, gods that are blue, or wear all kinds of elaborate outfits. So, they have these exercises where you imagine that your partner's blue or wearing these elaborate jewelry and costumes and stuff. You can do that if you want, or you can just, whatever is holy to you, you can just see your partner's divinity and go, I want to treat this person as a divine person, not to replace God, but to be, uh, a, recognize their divinity
Yeah.
and treat them that way. That would be a tantric exercise.
Okay. Well, I mean, that just leads me to you mentioned that you had some exercises that you wanted to share. Let's start with some of those simple exercises. What's a simple exercise somebody could use?
Simple exercises are any kind of mindfulness technique that you've already practiced, because there's a lot of research that I'm studying right now that people who practice sexual mindfulness, which would mean bringing your mindfulness to your lovemaking, it improves their relationship, not just their sex lives. So you approach each other. We're taught that sex is very goal oriented. Since Masters and Johnson, we've been taught that sex is supposed to be building tension to get to the orgasm and then releasing tension. So we're building to release. And we've been taught, and pretty much we've just assumed that that's how you make love. And actually, that's only one way of making love. There are as many ways of making love as there are people.
Mm.
And a sexual mindfulness would be letting go of that idea of we're trying to get somewhere. And we're in mindfulness, we're trying to be present in this present moment with our beloved. We're letting go of the idea that we need to orgasm. We can do that if we want, but if we orgasm, we have to stop. So we're not really looking forward to when we have to stop. And we just be present and honoring and touching, being conscious of touch. And this is where we would start a tantric practice to get to super states of consciousness. What my husband and I found is when we first met, we started making love for 6 or 7 hours. We didn't even know that existed. We're like, what is going on here? What is this? We didn't know it's possible. He had read some articles before we met that he wanted to experiment with not orgasming, because obviously when a man ejaculates, that's the end.
Mhm.
And a lot of women are left frustrated at that point because they wanted to caress and continue making love for a while. So started practicing. Instead of doing any techniques, he just would relax when he felt like ejaculating. We just would keep love making. And it was the same for me. And what we found out through those extended periods of lovemaking without orgasming is that we started turning into the kind of people who knew how to be in a relationship, because his relationship history was terrible also. So being in those super states of consciousness, just by being in them and by seeing each other's divinity
Mm.
and not just trying to use each other so we could get off, we transformed as people who suddenly knew how to do relationships.
Mm.
It was a miracle. And we just started wanting to share this and find out. That's one reason I went back to school, because like I want to find out if like being in these higher states of consciousness, does these super states, as you call them, transforms people. So people get transformed from psychedelic super states, they get transformed from aerobic super states, from sports, dancing, all kinds of things. It appears, at least from our small sample, that having these super states, these sexual super states of being in this aroused sexual state that's very loving and not orgasming, we it transformed our relationship into one that was loving and not full of fighting as we had both experienced before. So I just wanted to share this in my books and hopefully in my research that these states are available to everyone. We haven't been made aware of them, but they can be very transformative and fun. You don't have to do a lot of, sitting and meditating facing the wall, which I never really found fun. And you get yourself into a meditative, sexually mindful state, and then you just stay there. And it helps you transform being in that super state into a more loving uh, person and couple.
What I like about what you've just described is it reminds me of what breath work does too, where breathing in a certain way, and then you just let the energy do what it needs to do to basically to heal you, and you don't have to know what it's doing. You just let it do what it needs to do. It's kind of a similar type of thing. You're in that heightened state. It's like an ecstatic, sexual ecstasy connection state, but you're not like sending that energy anywhere. You're just being present in that
Exactly.
said mindful in the moment.
That's exactly like it because obviously your breath is altered when you're sexually aroused. And a lot of the old Tantra exercises back in the olden days, thousands of years ago, were about holding the breath and pushing the breath, having it go somewhere and so forth. We didn't do any of that. Just as you said, we let the energy work itself. We were unaware that it was transforming us. We were just, kind of in shock. And I think that's a great analogy because I've done holotropic breath work, and it is really like just letting the breath transform you. This is letting that beautiful sexual healing energy transform us. And then we're like, oh my gosh, why do we get along so well when both of our relationships in the past were terrible? This seems to be transforming us in a really good way. We're not spending half our time fighting, which in my previous relationships, that was the case.
So, just lost my question. I had a question for you. As far as I know what I was going to ask you. You started out as a marriage family counselor. Do you still do that, or have you shifted to tantric coaching? Like, what is it that you consider yourself now as?
Yeah, I do licensed therapy and I have clients. I work like this over the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And then we give Tantra workshops and then I write my books. So I would say that I do some tantric counseling. Some of the couples who come to me, I'm doing actual uh, licensed marriage counseling with them, but I might throw in some tantric suggestions, like maybe you guys could do some mindfulness, like I just talked with you guys about. Maybe you guys could practice seeing each other as the divine. Maybe you guys could practice some breathing together, that type of thing. So I may or may not, depending on if the couple's open to it, throw in some suggestions of that sort.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a combination. There's a lot of people teaching Tantra who are great. They don't necessarily have the licensed counseling part where I spent all those years learning how to do effective counseling, hopefully effective, and add that to some of these tantric principles about how to hold your relationship as part of your spiritual path.
And as you're working with clients, what's a typical kind of a client that you work with? Who are the kind of people that you tend to work with?
I tend to work with individuals, and then I work with couples who uh, may be at different places in their relationship. Some of them are new and wanting to get off on the right foot. Actually, most couples who come to therapy are kind of in a place where they're stuck and they can't figure out how to go forward. Sometimes, if they want to go forward, um, sometimes I'll see people who've been together for many years and they aren't making love anymore. And I tell them it's possible, even though you haven't made love for a long time and you don't think you like each other anymore, it is possible with some work for you to have the best sex of your life. because this is another thing that's really not true in the mainstream, which is this idea that sex gets worse as you get older, or you lose your interest, or the longer you've been in a relationship, it goes downhill. That's possible, but it's also possible for people who are growing and working on themselves to be having the best sex of their life as they continue to evolve.
Mm.
So, one of the best kept secrets is not only how much better life is when you're older, but how much better sex can be when you're older. Yes, you can't just expect it to just be like it was when you're 20, but also when you're older, you don't want it to be like it was when you're 20. You want it to be more loving, more slow, more meditative. Most people, you want it to be more sharing feelings instead of just getting off. And that is perfect for tantric lovemaking.
Mm.
It's perfect because you're done with all the showing off and gymnastics and stuff. If you want to do that, still fine, but you don't feel compelled that that's the most interesting thing. The hormones change and people become more wanting to make love in a loving way. And to me, that's far better than anything that happened when I was younger. My husband is also in his 60s and he's also not taking any Viagra, having the best sex of his life as well. So, it's all possible. It depends how much you want to change some of the ideas that you have and learn a new way of being, which everybody on a spiritual path is kind of like, tell me more.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to learn more.
So, tell me a practical way someone could use an idea like this.
A practical way they could use it?
Yeah.
Um, well, one practical way is that you can just assume that anyone you're talking to in any moment is from the divine.
Mm.
So, and then you start noticing how your mind starts judging them. It's very interesting. So, this is in my book, Tantric Dating. You start noticing how your mind is going, yeah, but they're too fat, or I don't like their shirt, or, we've been brainwashed to treat other people this way. You start going, oh, I hate what you just said. You vote the wrong way. Your whole mind, you just watch this whole chatter in your mind getting in the way of being able to express love with this person. That right there is a practical spiritual experience that you can do. I tell my clients, go to Starbucks and do that. Just notice
Yeah.
how you start, especially single people go to Starbucks and go, oh, that one's cute, that one's not. I go, okay, you've been taught to do that, but why don't you start going to Starbucks and going, who in here looks like they do a lot of volunteer work? Who in here looks like they a really loving son or daughter? Who in here looks like they really have good values? So we just start changing the way we sort for people. And this is going to show up in our intimate relationships too, because instead of going, oh, I can't stand that thing you did and I'm still mad about it, we go, that happened. How are we going to process this together?
Yeah.
It's very practical in every moment.
It's a much healthier way. I've used that sometimes with clients as a way just to remember and kind of see them as that spark of divinity or that highest self or whatever that is, right? Just a way of kind of recognizing them at a place beyond where they're kind of stuck in their problem to a place where they're beyond that.
Exactly. And then you can bust yourself because you're like, wow, I think I'm this big loving person and look at how judgmental I am.
Absolutely.
It doesn't work.
Is there anything, so say that somebody's really curious about exploring these tantric ideas, is there anything they need to be aware of or any kind of, any risks that might show up for them? Like what do they need to know?
I would say when you go out to explore Tantra, that can mean a lot of things. So just kind of look into what your look into the thing that you're going to do a little bit to do a little research on it before you do it. And what I'm talking about is, for example, my husband and I went to this thing. It was called Tantra, and all of a sudden it started turning into this group orgy. And like, if people want to do that, that's fine. But we're like, yikes, get me out of here. We didn't know this is what we signed up for. We don't want to be here. So if it says Tantra, just check to see what that is, if it's your cup of tea. If the orgy thinks your cup of tea, go for it. I don't care. I don't have a judgment on that, but it's not our thing. So just just look into it and see if it's your thing.
Got it. And sounds like that could be a little bit of a surprise if you're
It was
not
a big surprise.
expecting.
It was a big surprise.
So, Catherine, how do you envision the future of using these types of altered states, whether it's the tantric principles or breath or the psychedelics? Like, there's a lot of talk about super states and how these are usable for personal growth. So, what's making you excited about the future?
Oh, I'm very excited about it. I'm very excited about your podcast of just spreading the word because people are starting to take their own personal and spiritual growth into their own hands and say, I want to experiment with these things. I think it's outrageous that we're still legally not allowed to explore our own minds. That's just a little thing, but anyway, um, but many people are doing that anyway, and it looks like the future is that these things will, at least in some respect, be decriminalized or made legal for us to be able to explore our own minds and respectfully use them as tools of transformation, which they have been for millennium. We know that indigenous cultures have been using these techniques for spiritual growth and travel and understanding, and we're learning from them. And I see this as being a very exciting future of people really taking responsibility for, I want to expand to become the best human I can be.
Yeah,
I want to become the most loving person I can be. I want to become I want to have the greatest relationships I could possibly have. I want to be super fit. I want to be, just a great example of a human being in the short time I have here and help other people with that.
sounds like an amazing goal for just about anybody to have.
And thank you for being part of that,
Yeah. Well, Catherine, if somebody wants to learn more about you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, it's kind of hard not to find me. I have my website, which is myname.com, and I'm on all the usual social media, Instagram, Facebook. I have a YouTube channel with a lot of free videos. I think I have over 300 on there, just little bits and pieces about Tantra, psychedelics, all kinds of things, relationships, dating. And of course, my books are available on Amazon, and I purposely price them fairly low so that they're accessible. And I'd love if you keep in touch.
Yeah, great. I will make sure that we have all of those links in the show notes, so it'll be really easy for people to stay in touch.
Thanks.
And Catherine, what's the one insight that you want the audience to leave with today?
Um, I would say it's up to you, and you can create the most loving life possible. It doesn't seem like it, maybe, if you're stuck like I was for so many years, but if you keep trying and keep demanding of life that it give you the answers, you'll get there. And once you get there, it doesn't matter that took a long time. It's like, I got here. My life is full of love, and I'm who I'm supposed to be, and it's just worth working for.
I had a mentor one time share that you are exactly in the right place for you right now. And that really is really helpful when we start to kind of get in that comparison mindset.
Yes, definitely. And
Well,
when you're in despair, to know that it is coming, if you just
yeah,
keep on, just keep on.
yeah, absolutely. It's been really great to have you on the show today, Catherine. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Joshua.
Hey there. If you feel like something holds you back from reaching your true potential, listen up. I've got something incredible to share with you. I'm offering a free 7-day email program that helps you break through those blocks to get to the unshakable confidence and success that you deserve. Imagine starting each day with a clear mind, a strong sense of purpose, and the confidence to go after whatever it is that you truly want. This program guides you through a powerful process to uncover and then eliminate the root causes of your limitations. You receive daily emails with practical steps, immersive audio exercises, and techniques that help you rewrite your personal story. As your expert coach, I am there to support you every step of the way. Now, people have used this program to remove old triggers and create a new empowering mindset, or others have used it to remove resistance to taking certain actions. You can have these same kind of results or something different. If you feel ready to break free from what holds you back, the fears, the worries, the anxieties, those old patterns, whatever they are, and you're ready to embrace a life of confidence and fulfillment, go to xfactorhypnosis.com/transform. It's completely free and you gain a more empowered you. You can use the link in the show notes or just type xfactorhypnosis.com/transform into your favorite browser. Thanks for listening. And remember, stay curious, keep growing, and embrace your transformation.